Cough. Coughing up blood again. Arya looked at the glaring crimson red in her palm, calmly wiping it away as if it wasn't blood, just accidentally spilled tomato sauce. The doctor said she had, at most, 3 months left. If she didn't take the medicine, that's fine. These 10 years have been too tiring. She had loved Julian for 10 years and been his shadow for 10 years. On the bedside table lay a bank card. Julian had left it yesterday. He said, "Isabel's surgery was successful. This is your reward." Isabel, his beloved white moonlight. Also, the woman who used the heart that should have been hers to live. Arya laughed, the laughter forcing tears out with the cough. Julian, these 10 years, I don't want your money or your rewards. I just want you. Even for just one day. Now, I don't even want that one day. I just want to quietly die where you can't see me. Arya, get over here. On the other end of the phone, Julian's voice was as cold and devoid of emotion as ever. I'm busy. Arya covered her mouth, desperately suppressing the metallic taste in her throat, her voice sounding somewhat hoarse. I don't care what you're busy with. Julian's tone was full of impatience. Isabel wants to see you. Be at the first hospital's VIP ward within half an hour, or you'll face the consequences. The phone was hung up mercilessly. Arya looked at the phone screen and smiled self-deprecatingly. Isabel, Isabel. His world only ever had that one name. She put down the luggage she was packing and rummaged through a pile of clutter, finding a mask to put on. Not to hide her sickliness, but because she was afraid that the humility on her face would be seen too clearly by him. Half an hour later, first hospital. Arya had just reached the ward door when she heard Isabel's delicate crying from inside. Julian, I'm so scared. My hands, my legs, I can't control them. Am I going to be paralyzed? Don't be afraid. Julian's voice was the gentlest Arya had ever heard. The doctor said it's a normal post-operative rejection reaction. It'll get better after a while. But I'm still scared. Arya pushed open the door. In the hospital bed, Isabel wore a white hospital gown, her face pale and pitiful. Julian sat by the bed, holding her hand and gently comforting her. The scene stung Arya's eyes. You know how to come? Julian saw her, and his gaze instantly turned cold, as if she were something dirty. Traffic jam. Traffic jam. Julian sneered. I see you're paying less and less attention to what I say. Julian, don't blame Arya. Isabel said weakly, understandingly. Arya must have been delayed by something important. Arya, come over here, I have something to tell you. She reached out her hand to Arya. Arya walked over, and before she could speak, Isabel grabbed her hand. Arya, I know you've worked hard all these years. Isabel's eyes were red-rimmed. If you hadn't been by Julian's side, fending off all those admirers, Julian wouldn't have waited so peacefully for me. Now that I'm back, let me take care of Julian from now on. These words were impeccable, both declaring ownership and seemingly bestowing a favor. Arya looked at her, suddenly finding it a bit funny. She wasn't even dead yet, and someone was already impatiently trying to take her place. Miss Isabel. Arya pulled her hand away, her voice distant. I think you've got the wrong idea. Julian and I just have a contractual relationship. When the time comes, I will naturally leave. You. Isabel didn't expect her to be so unyielding, her face paling. Arya. Julian stood up abruptly, grabbing Arya and pulling her in front of him, his eyes fierce. What kind of attitude is that? Apologize to Isabel. I did nothing wrong, why should I apologize? Arya stubbornly met his gaze. 10 years. For the first time, she didn't obey him. Good, very good. Julian laughed in anger. Looks like I've spoiled you too much. Arya, let me tell you, Isabel just had surgery and is very weak. From today onwards, you'll move in and take care of her 24 hours a day, until she recovers. Let her take care of her love rival? And 24 hours a day. This was simply the biggest joke in the world. What if I don't agree? Arya's voice was very soft, but it carried a hint of determination. Don't agree? Julian looked as if he had heard something unbelievable. He pinched her chin, the force so great that it almost crushed her bones. Arya, don't forget, your gambling-addicted father still owes me $5 million. If you dare say no, I'll send him to jail right now. Father. Arya's body trembled violently. That man, although worthless, was after all her only relative in this world. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, all the emotions in her eyes had faded away, leaving only a dead silence. Okay, she heard herself say. I agree. Julian released her hand with satisfaction, his eyes full of contempt. He knew it. This woman was always so cheap, willing to do anything for money. The corners of Isabel's mouth curled into a smug smile. Arya, fight with me? You're still too green. From that day on, Arya lived in the hospital's storage room. She really was like a nurse, taking care of Isabel's every need. Bathing her, feeding her, handling her bodily waste. Isabel tormented her in every way she could, complaining that the water was too hot one moment, the food didn't suit her taste the next. Even when she was coughing up blood, Isabel deliberately knocked over a glass of water, forcing her to kneel on the ground and pick up the shards piece by piece with her bare hands. Arya endured it all. She thought this was probably retribution. It was because she had stolen someone she shouldn't have, that she was suffering this fate today. That night, Isabel suddenly developed a high fever, and her rejection reaction intensified. She was rushed to the emergency room. Julian, like a madman, rushed into the storage room and dragged Arya, who was coughing up blood, out of bed. It's all your fault. It's all because you didn't take good care of Isabel. His eyes were bloodshot as he grabbed her neck and slammed her against the wall. Cough. Cough, cough. Arya was choking, her vision blurring. If anything happens to Isabel, I'll make you be buried with her. Julian's voice was like a curse from hell. Buried with her? Arya suddenly laughed. She used her last bit of strength to grab his hand. Julian. She looked at him and said, word by word. You don't deserve me. What did you say? Julian's pupils suddenly constricted. He couldn't believe that these words would come from Arya's mouth. This woman, who had always been submissive to him and never dared to speak loudly, actually dared to say that he didn't deserve her? I said you don't deserve me. Arya repeated it, her eyes filled with unprecedented calmness and mockery. You want me to be buried with her? Julian, you're dreaming. After saying that, she didn't know where she got the strength, but she pushed him away violently and began to cough violently. Blood dripped onto the ground through her fingers. 1 drop, 2 drops. A shocking sight. Julian was stunned. He looked at the blood on the ground, then at Arya's face, as pale as paper, and for the first time, a strange sense of panic arose in his heart. What's wrong with you? He subconsciously reached out to support her. Don't touch me. Arya, however, recoiled as if she had been stung by a scorpion, taking a step back and avoiding his touch. Her eyes were cold and disgusted. Get out. She said only one word. Julian's hand froze in midair. He had lived for 28 years, and this was the first time someone had treated him with that word. And it was the woman he looked down on the most. An inexplicable rage instantly clouded his mind. Arya, who do you think you are? How dare you talk to me like that? He grabbed her wrist, the force so great that it seemed like he was going to break her bones. Letting you see Isabel is an honor for you. How dare you act up here? Cough, cough. Let go. Arya's forehead was covered in cold sweat from the pain, and her breathing became difficult. Her heart felt like it was being squeezed tightly by an invisible hand, the pain almost suffocating her. Let go? Sure. Julian sneered and dragged her to the door of the emergency room. Kneel. He pointed to the cold ground, his voice devoid of warmth. Kneel here until Isabel is out of danger. Arya's body swayed. She looked at the red light in the emergency room, and then at the cold-hearted man in front of her. Her heart sank, little by little. She knew that she might die here today. That's fine. Dying in front of him would be like putting an end to this 10-year joke. She slowly bent her knees, just as her knees were about to touch the ground. Stop. An angry male voice came from behind. Immediately afterward, a warm coat was draped over her shoulders. Arya turned her head and saw a familiar face. Dr. Samuel. Samuel, the youngest director of cardiac surgery at the first hospital. Also, the only person who knew about her condition. Arya, you're crazy. Samuel looked at her pale face and the bloodstains on her lips, his heart aching with pity. He supported her faltering body, turned around, and glared at Julian with extremely angry eyes. Mr. Julian, even if she is your subordinate, you have no right to humiliate her like this. Julian frowned as he looked at the man who suddenly appeared. Especially when he saw the way that man looked at Arya. The inexplicable agitation in his heart became even more intense. Who are you? He asked coldly. I am her attending physician, Samuel said, word by word. She has severe congenital heart disease. She cannot be stimulated. She cannot overwork, and she definitely cannot be tormented like this. What did you say? Julian's mind buzzed. Heart disease? Arya has heart disease. How come he didn't know? Impossible, he retorted subconsciously. If she were sick these 10 years. Do you know how she relied on medication to work for you for the past 10 years? Samuel interrupted him, his voice full of mockery. Julian, you only know that your white moonlight needs a heart transplant. But do you know who the only successfully matched heart 3 years ago was originally prepared for? Julian's body shook violently. Seemed to remember something. 3 years ago, Isabel's attending physician did tell him that a heart source had been found, but someone else had gotten there first. At the time, Isabel told him that it was an anonymous person who got the money and went abroad to enjoy life. Because of his guilt and trust, he didn't investigate further. Could it be that anonymous person was? He didn't dare to think further. He looked at Arya's bloodless face, and his heart felt like it was being tightly gripped by a large hand, the pain making it hard for him to breathe. Arya. He opened his mouth with difficulty, wanting to say something. Don't say my name. Arya interrupted him, her voice hoarse. I find it dirty. She leaned in Samuel's arms, without even looking at him again. Dr. Samuel, take me away. Okay. Samuel picked her up in his arms and turned to leave, leaving Julian alone, standing there like a statue with its soul emptied. He watched them leave, watched Arya nestled in another man's arms, and that strange emotion called jealousy almost swallowed him whole. Why? Why did he feel so uncomfortable? It was as if something very important was leaving him. Samuel took Arya back to his lounge. He carefully placed her on the bed, covered her with a blanket, and poured her a glass of warm water. Thank you, Dr. Samuel. Arya's voice was still weak. Still calling me Dr. Samuel. Samuel frowned even more tightly. Arya, when are you going to stop treating me like an outsider? Arya didn't say anything, just turned her head away. Samuel and she were college classmates. Back then, he was a golden boy, a top student in the medical department. And she was just an unknown, poor student. He pursued her for 4 years, and she refused him for 4 years. It wasn't that she didn't like him. It was that she didn't dare. Someone like her, living in the mud, not knowing when she might die. How could she be worthy of reaching for the moon in the sky? Why come back? Samuel sat on the edge of the bed, his voice filled with suppressed heartache. To come back and let him continue to torment you? Arya, he doesn't love you at all. He just treats you like a tool. I know. Arya's voice was very light, very faint. I know he doesn't love me. 10 years. How could she not know? But knowing and letting go were two different things. Then why? Samuel. Arya interrupted him, raised her head and looked at him. I don't have much time left. Samuel's heart sank sharply. What do you mean? My medication has stopped. Arya said it so casually, as if she were talking about something that had nothing to do with her. Samuel's eyes turned red instantly. You're crazy. He grabbed her shoulders and roared uncontrollably. Arya, how dare you? How dare you stop taking your medication? Do you know that if you stop taking your medication, you won't even last 3 months? I know. Arya looked at him and smiled. 3 months is enough. Enough for her to pay off her debt to Julian. And enough for her to put an end to these 10 years of absurdity. It's not enough. Samuel's tears finally couldn't help but fall. Arya, you can't be so selfish. Have you ever thought about me? I've waited for you for 10 years. A whole 10 years. I studied medicine desperately just to cure your illness. Now, I've become an authority in cardiac surgery, but you want to give up. Arya, how can you be so cruel? He hugged her tightly, like a helpless child. Arya's body stiffened. She could feel his body trembling slightly. She could also feel the hot tears dripping onto her neck. I'm sorry. She closed her eyes and said softly. Besides those 3 words, she didn't know what else she could say. Julian returned to the company in a daze. He locked himself in his office and smoked all night. Samuel's words, like a curse, echoed repeatedly in his mind. Heart disease. Medication stopped. 3 months. He couldn't believe it, and he didn't want to believe it. How could that woman die? She was so resilient, so humble, like a weed that couldn't be trampled to death. How could she die? Investigate. He called his assistant, his voice hoarse beyond recognition. Investigate all of Arya's medical records for the past 10 years. And 3 years ago, the first hospital's heart source. The transfer agreement. I want to know everything. An hour later, the assistant placed a thick file on his desk. Julian trembled as he opened the file. The first page was Arya's medical record. Congenital dilated cardiomyopathy. The diagnosis date was 10 years ago. Exactly the same year he met her. The second page, the third page, were all her medication records for the past 10 years. Those expensive imported drugs matched exactly the amount of living expenses he gave her each month. The money he thought he was giving away was actually her life-saving money. Julian's breathing became rapid. He turned to the last page. It was a heart transplant rights transfer agreement. The person relinquishing the rights signed 3 words, Arya, and the recipient was Isabel. In the remarks column of the agreement, there was also a line of small print, voluntary donation to repay Mr. Julian's 10 years of kindness, and settle all debts from now on. Boom. Julian's mind exploded completely. He stood up abruptly and swept all the things on his desk onto the floor. He let out a painful roar like a wounded beast. Not for his happiness, but to settle all debts with him. It was him. It was he who personally gave the heart that should have belonged to her to someone else. It was he who personally cut off her only way to live. A mouthful of blood spurted from his mouth. He clutched his chest, fell to his knees, his body trembling violently. Endless remorse and pain swept over him like a tide, completely engulfing him. He was wrong. He was really wrong. Isabel, I want to see Isabel. Julian rushed out of the office like a madman and drove to the hospital. He wanted to ask clearly. He wanted to ask that woman face to face what exactly was going on. In the VIP ward, Isabel was enjoying the attentive care of a caregiver. Seeing Julian rush in, she was first stunned, then gave a sweet smile. Julian, why are you here? Your face. Why does it look so terrible? Slap. A loud slap landed hard on her face. Isabel was dumbfounded, covered her face, and looked at him in disbelief. Julian. You hit me. I'm not just going to hit you, I'm going to kill you. Julian's eyes were bloodshot. He grabbed her by the neck and lifted her from the bed. Speak. What happened to that heart 3 years ago? Did you know it was originally Arya's? A flicker of panic flashed in Isabel's eyes. But she quickly composed herself, crying like a weeping pear blossom. Julian. What are you saying? I don't understand. Wasn't that heart? Didn't you? Help me find it. I found it. Julian sneered, throwing the transfer agreement hard at her face. Then tell me, why is Arya's signature on this? Isabel's face drained of all color when she saw the agreement. She knew she couldn't hide it anymore. It was me who begged her. She collapsed to the ground, hugging Julian's leg, crying. Julian, I was dying then, I didn't want to die. I told her that if she was willing to give me her heart, I would persuade you to let go of her father who was in debt with gambling. She agreed to it herself. She even said she was sick of you long ago. She couldn't wait to leave you. Shut up. Julian kicked her away, the disgust in his eyes almost consuming her. He finally understood. This woman had been using his guilt to put on an act for him from beginning to end. All the kindness, all the purity were fake. Julian, I was wrong. Please forgive me. Isabel pleaded bitterly. Get out. Julian pointed to the door, his voice cold as ice. From today on, I don't want to see you again. I will stop all your medical expenses. You take care of yourself. With that, he left without looking back. He had to find Arya. He wanted to apologize to her. He wanted to make amends. He ran to Samuel's lounge, but the door was locked. He pounded on the door like a madman, roaring, "Arya! Get out here! I was wrong! Come out and meet me!" There was no response. He searched the entire hospital, even using his connections to check the surveillance footage, only to discover that Samuel had used his position to erase all traces long ago, taking Arya through a secret passage. He called, the phone was off. He sent messages, no reply. She vanished without a trace, as if she had evaporated from the world. A month later, in a private sanatorium that was not open to the public, Arya leaned against the window, watching the blooming roses downstairs, coughing harder and harder. Her body had reached its limit. Her vision began to blur, and her legs became weak. She knew her time was running out. During this month, Samuel had accompanied her, walking through every corner of the sanatorium. They watched the sunrise, admired the starry sky, and swung on a swing in the garden. Like a true couple, Arya. Samuel walked in, holding a bowl of freshly brewed Chinese medicine. "It's time for your medicine." Arya turned her head and smiled at him. "Samuel, don't waste your effort, it's useless." "How do you know if you don't try?" Samuel held the bowl of medicine to her lips, his eyes gentle and persistent. Arya couldn't refuse him and took a sip. The bitter medicine slid down her throat, but it couldn't suppress the surge of blood in her chest. Cough! Cough, cough! She coughed up blood again. This time, more than ever before. Samuel's face turned pale instantly. He put down the bowl and held her tightly, his voice trembling. "Arya! Don't scare me!" "Samuel." Arya leaned in his arms, her voice as light as a feather. "If I die, cremate me. And scatter my ashes into the sea. I don't want to be found by anyone again. Especially Julian." She didn't want him to see her pathetic state after death. She wanted to remain in his heart forever as the resilient, proud Arya. "Don't talk nonsense." Samuel covered her mouth, tears falling uncontrollably again. "You won't die. I won't let you die." He took out his phone and dialed a number. "Hello, teacher, it's me. I need your help. I have a patient, He described Arya's condition in detail. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. After a long while, an old and tired voice came. "Samuel, it's too late. Her myocardium has already failed. Unless we can find a brand new, perfectly matched heart. Otherwise, not even the immortals can save her." Samuel's phone slipped from his hand. He stared blankly at Arya, who had fallen into a coma in his arms, feeling his world crumbling bit by bit. No. There must be a way. There must be. He suddenly thought of something, his pupils suddenly contracted. Artificial heart. Using stem cells to cultivate a brand new heart. This was the most cutting-edge technology his teacher was researching. Although the success rate was less than 1%, but this was her only hope. "Teacher, please, save her." Samuel knelt before an old man with white hair, begging bitterly. This old man was the top cardiothoracic surgeon in the country, and also his mentor, Professor Wells. Professor Wells looked at him and sighed. "Samuel, it's not that I don't want to help you. This technology is not yet mature. The risk is too great. Moreover, cultivating a heart requires a large number of stem cells. The donor's body will be severely damaged, even endangering their life. I'll donate." Samuel did not hesitate at all. "I'm type A blood, which matches Arya's blood type. Use my stem cells." "Nonsense." Professor Wells shouted sternly. "You're a doctor too. You should know what this means." "I don't care." Samuel's eyes were bloodshot. "As long as it can save her, I'm willing to do anything, even if it means death." Professor Wells looked at the resolve in his eyes and ultimately softened. "All right." He waved his hand. "Let me think of something." At the same time, Julian was going crazy. He had been looking for Arya for a month, using all his connections and relationships, turning almost the entire Jiang city upside down. But he couldn't even find a trace of her. He lived in endless regret and panic every day. He was afraid. He was afraid that she would really die silently in some corner, as Samuel had said. No, he would never allow it. That day he received a call from his assistant. Mr. Julian, we found something. We hacked into Samuel's computer and discovered that he just placed an extremely expensive order with a Swiss biological laboratory. The order is for an artificial heart cultivation device. Julian's mind went blank. He understood everything. Aria's illness had become so serious that she needed a heart transplant. And Samuel intended to trade his life for hers. The address. He squeezed out 2 words between his teeth. When Julian kicked open the door of the sanatorium, he saw Samuel about to inject a sedative into the unconscious Aria. Stop! He roared, like an enraged lion, rushing over and punching Samuel to the ground. What are you trying to do to her? Samuel wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at him coldly. It's none of your business. None of my business? Julian grabbed his collar and lifted him off the ground. Samuel, you want to save her with your life? I'm telling you, you don't have the right. The one who deserves to die is me. He turned his head and looked at Aria, who was lying on the bed, pale as a ghost. His heart felt like it was being flayed. She's my woman. If her life is to be saved, it should be me who saves it. He threw Samuel aside, took out his phone, and dialed the Swiss laboratory's number. This is Julian. His voice carried an undeniable authority. I'm buying your equipment. In addition, I'm investing 10 billion into your laboratory in the name of the Lu Corporation. I have only one request. Get your best team here as quickly as possible. The donor is me. If anything happens to my woman, I'll make your entire laboratory pay with their lives. After hanging up the phone, he walked to the bedside and slowly knelt down. He reached out, trembling, wanting to touch Aria's face, but he didn't dare. He was afraid that his hands, stained with sin, would defile her. Aria. He lowered his head and buried his face in her palm. Warm tears wet her cold fingers. I'm sorry. I know it's ridiculous to say these 3 words now. But please give me another chance. Live. As long as you're willing to live, I'll give you my life, my heart, everything. Okay. In her coma, Aria seemed to hear his voice. Her finger twitched slightly. The Swiss team arrived in Jiang City as quickly as possible. A temporary, top-notch sterile laboratory was set up in the sanatorium. Julian lay on the operating table, looking at Professor Wells, who was also wearing sterile clothing, beside him. Let's begin. His voice was very calm. Professor Wells looked at him with a complicated expression. Mr. Julian, are you really sure about this? The process of extracting bone marrow stem cells is extremely painful. Moreover, given the amount you need, your body will suffer irreversible damage. Your lifespan may be shortened by at least 10 years as a result. 10 years. Julian smiled, the smile containing a trace of relief. If it can exchange for her safety, I'm willing to use even all of my remaining lifespan to exchange for it. Professor Wells sighed and stopped trying to dissuade him. He picked up the puncture needle and aimed it at Julian's lower back. Intense pain instantly erupted. It was like bones being crushed and then drilled out bit by bit. Beads of sweat instantly appeared on Julian's forehead, but he clenched his teeth and didn't make a sound. There was only one thought in his mind. Aria, wait for me. You must wait for me. For the next month, Julian barely left the operating table. One bone marrow puncture after another quickly broke down his body. He lost a full 30 pounds. The once spirited and arrogant man became haggard, with sunken eye sockets. But his eyes grew brighter. Because every day, he could see through the glass of the laboratory that seed of life, belonging to Aria, was pulsing, little by little, in the petri dish. He felt that all the pain he was enduring was worth it. Samuel was not idle either. He stayed by Aria's side, taking care of her and observing her vital signs. The 2 former rivals had reached a strange tacit understanding for the sake of the same woman. Neither of them mentioned the past again. They had only one common goal: to keep her alive. That day, Julian had just stepped off the operating table when he received a call from his assistant. Mr. Julian, something bad has happened. Isabel, she leaked everything about you and Ms. Aria to the media. Now the entire internet is filled with news scolding you and Ms. Aria. Julian's face instantly darkened. He opened his phone. Hashtag shocking scandal. President of the Lu Corporation abandons terminally ill girlfriend for mistress. Hashtag. Hashtag most vicious mistress. Steals life-saving heart and kills the original partner. Hashtag. Hashtag human flesh Arya. Get her out of Jiang City. Hashtag. Countless curses and abuses, like a tidal wave, surged towards Arya. Some even dug up her father's address. A group of self-proclaimed righteous keyboard warriors rushed to her father's house, smashing, vandalizing, and scrawling graffiti. Julian. Samuel burst in, landing a punch on his face. Look at the good you've done. Arya. She's already like this. Why do you still make her endure this? Julian didn't fight back. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, his eyes filled with towering murderous intent. Isabel. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. It's me. Get all the news suppressed at all costs. Also go tell Isabel. Her death date has arrived. Isabel's end was more miserable than anyone imagined. Julian not only stopped all her medical expenses, but also made public all the evidence of how she had painstakingly schemed to steal Arya's heart back then. Overnight, she went from a victim who was sympathized with to a scheming bitch that everyone cursed. She was kicked out of the hospital, penniless, and her rejection reaction worsened. Finally, on a rainy night, she died in a dirty street corner. No one collected her body, and those keyboard warriors who had once wantonly insulted Arya online also received lawyers' letters from the Lu Group. Awaiting them was huge compensation and imprisonment. Julian used the harshest means to tell everyone. Whoever dared to touch a hair on Arya's head, he would make them wish they were dead. After doing all this, he dragged his tired body back to the sanatorium. He walked to Arya's bed, looked at her still sleeping peacefully, and whispered, Arya, don't be afraid. From now on, I will be your knife, your shield. Whoever dares to hurt you, I will kill them. The heart cultivation was successful. When Professor Wells announced the news, Julian and Samuel, two grown men, couldn't help but shed tears. The date of the surgery was set for 3 days later. That day was Arya's birthday. Julian pushed Arya into the operating room. He held her cold hand, put it to his lips, and kissed it gently. Arya, happy birthday. Wait for me. Wait for me, I'll take you home. As if Arya heard his words, a crystal tear rolled down the corner of her eye. The surgery lasted a full 48 hours. It was a miracle unprecedented in medical history. When the operating room lights finally went out, when Professor Wells came out and said with a smile, the surgery was successful, Julian could no longer hold on and collapsed to the ground. He was too tired. His physical and mental exhaustion over the past month had reached its limit. Julian was unconscious for 7 days and 7 nights. He had a very long dream. In the dream, he returned to 10 years ago. On that sunny afternoon, he saw the girl in a white dress, quietly reading a book, for the first time in the university library. Her name was Arya. He walked over and asked her, classmate, what is your name? She looked up and smiled at him. That one glance was forever. When Julian woke up, the first thing he saw was Arya, sitting by his bed, peeling an apple. The sunlight shone on her, warm and beautiful, as if all the suffering had never happened. You're awake? When Arya saw him open his eyes, the knife in her hand shook, almost cutting herself. How do you feel? Her voice was still a little weak, but it already had vitality. Very good. Julian looked at her, the tenderness in his eyes almost overflowing. He wanted to reach out and hug her, but found that he didn't even have the strength to raise his hand. Don't move. Arya held him down. The doctor said you lost too much blood and need to rest. She cut the peeled apple into small pieces, skewered one with a toothpick, and brought it to his mouth. Eat it. Julian opened his mouth and took a bite. It was very sweet. It was the sweetest thing he had ever eaten in his life. Arya. He looked at her, his voice hoarse. I'm sorry. Arya's movements paused. She lowered her head and said softly, it's all over. Yes. It was all over. What couldn't a person who had died once not let go of? It's not over. Julian shook his head, stubbornly looking at her. Arya, I owe you, and I can't pay it back in my entire life. I don't need you to pay it back either. Arya raised her head, looked at him, her eyes calm. Julian, let's end it. I don't hate you anymore. So let yourself go too. We owe each other nothing. Julian's heart felt like it had been stabbed hard. Owe each other nothing? She actually said that they owed each other nothing? No. He didn't want that. Arya. He didn't know where the strength came from, but he suddenly sat up, pulling out the 4 tube in his hand, and blood gushed out instantly. But he didn't care, looking at her with bloodshot eyes, his voice hoarse and obsessive. If you dare to say end it, I'll die in front of you right now. Your life was exchanged by me. From now on, every breath you take is mine. His confession was domineering, forceful, and filled with a suffocating possessiveness. Arya was stunned by the madness in his eyes. At that moment, the door to the ward was pushed open. Samuel walked in. He looked at the 2 people entangled on the bed, paused, and then smiled bitterly. Looks like I've come at a bad time. He placed a document in his hand on the bedside table. Arya, these are your discharge papers. And he took out 2 plane tickets from his pocket. These are tickets to Switzerland. I've already arranged the best rehabilitation center there for you. We're leaving tomorrow. After speaking, he gave Arya a deep look and turned to leave. Only Julian and Arya remained in the ward. The air seemed to freeze. After a long while, Julian spoke with difficulty. You're going with him? Arya didn't speak, which was considered a tacit agreement. I won't allow it. Julian, like a trapped beast driven to a dead end, flipped out of bed and knelt directly in front of her. He raised his head, his scarlet eyes filled with humble pleading. Arya, don't go. I beg you, don't leave me. I know I was wrong. I was really wrong. You can make me do anything, even let me be your dog. As long as you're willing to stay by my side. Arya's heart was completely in turmoil. She looked at this man who had once been so high and mighty, but was now kneeling in front of her, as humble as dust. Her heart, in the end, still softened. She raised her hand and gently stroked his face, as if comforting a lost, big boy. The next day at the airport, Samuel, pulling a suitcase, stood at the boarding gate, constantly checking the time. Arya, in the end, still didn't come. He smiled bitterly and turned to walk through the boarding gate alone. At the same time, in the hospital ward, Arya stayed by Julian's bedside, watching his peaceful sleeping face, her eyes complex. In the end, she still couldn't bear to leave. Perhaps this was fate. She and he were destined to be entangled for a lifetime. She lowered her head and gently placed a kiss on his forehead. Julian, this time let me protect you. Outside the window, the sunlight was perfect. A new story had only just begun.